That we'll get started. I have a reading of our land acknowledgement. Councillor Slip.
In the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge our meeting place, the city of Flin Flon Council Chambers, is situated on the ancestral lands of the Treaty 5 territory. We would like to acknowledge that we also work in partnership with First Nations in Treaty 6 and 10 territories and the Métis Nation.
Thank you. We will now have a reading and confirming of the minutes. Councillor Split.
Be it resolved that the minutes of the regular meeting of council held November 7, 2023 be adopted as received.
Seconder, Councillor Hanson. All in favor? Carried. So first up, first order of business is this evening was set to be the 2024 Board of Revision. We have received no appeals, so therefore the Board of Revision is concluded. We'll move on to resolutions. Councillor Dallas Funk.
Check schedule 47-02, be it resolved that the accounts in the amount of $1,544,632.35 be approved for payment.
Seconder, Councillor Eagle. All in favor? Carried. Councillor Hanson.
I have the economic incentives for businesses, the second reading, 47-3. Be it resolved, the bylaw number 2023-17 being a bylaw of the city of Flin Flon to establish a policy for economic incentives for new businesses or existing, to be known as the economic incentives for business bylaw, be read a second time to pass on second reading.
Seconder, Councillor Slip. All in favor? Carried.
The final reading. Be it resolved, the bylaw number 2023-17 being a bylaw of the city of Flin Flon to establish a policy for economic incentives for new businesses or existing, to be known as the economic incentives for businesses bylaw, be done and finally passed.
Seconder, Councillor Dallas Funk. All in favor? Carried. Councillor Richardson.
Bylaw 2023-18, amend development plan, Parks and Rec to residential, first reading. Be it resolved that the bylaw number 2023-18 of the city of Flin Flon to amend the city of Flin Flon development plan, bylaw number 37-83, be read a first time and passed on first reading.
Seconder, Councillor Slip. All in favor? Carried.
Bylaw 2023-19, amend zoning plan, Parks and Rec to residential, first reading. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2023-19 of the city of Flin Flon to amend the city of Flin Flon zoning plan, bylaw number 27-84, be read on a first time and passed on first reading.
Seconder, Councillor Hanson. All in favor? Carried.
So that is the plot of land beside the zoo where the old Willowville Curling Club location is. And we're wanting to change it from parks and recreation to residential zoning.
The zoo stayed.
Yeah, the zoo's staying where it is.
And we're going to be having a public hearing on that next meeting, which is December the 5th. So that'll be the public hearing. Tuesday, December 5th. Okay. Councillor Eagle.
Yes, thank you. This is Flin Flon Utility Deficit 2022, Resolution 47-7. Whereas the city of Flin Flon has received a utility rate study for the Flin Flon water and wastewater utility, and whereas the Flin Flon utility incurred adjusted deficits when calculated for regulatory purposes of $372,385 in 2018 and $1,091,682 in 2022. And whereas the Flin Flon utility has an adjusted working capital deficit in 2022 of $8,786,767, which does not meet the Public Utilities Board required minimum working capital surplus of $1,149,054. Therefore, be it resolved that the City of Flin Flon request approval from the Public Utilities Board for the deficits of $372,385 in 2018 and $1,091,682 in 2022, with said deficits proposed to be recovered through a rate rider of $1.69 per 1,000 gallons of water consumed for a period of 5 years, or until the total amount of $1,464,067 is recovered, whichever comes first. And further be it resolved that bylaw 2023-20 to establish Flin Flon utility rates be given first reading and submitted to the Public Utilities Board for approval.
Seconder, Councillor Hanson. All in favor? Carried.
And one further bylaw. This is bylaw 2023-20, new water rates, and this involves 2025, 2026, 2027, and 2028, 47-8. Be it resolved that bylaw number 2023-20, being a bylaw of the City of Flin Flon to establish new water and wastewater rates for the Flin Flon utility, to be known as the Water and Wastewater Rates Bylaw, be read a first time and passed on first reading.
Seconder, Councillor Dallas Funk. All in favor? Carried. Councillor Slip.
Granted leave for Mayor Fontaine. Be it resolved that Council grant Mayor Fontaine leave of absence for the December 5th, 2023 Council meeting.
Seconder, Councillor Eagle. All in favor?
And we hope our mayor gets back to us soon.
Yes. Councillor Slip.
Oh, sorry. Animal Control Report, September and October 2023, 47-10. Be resolved that the Animal Control Report for the months of September and October 2023 be received and filed.
Seconder, Councillor Richardson. All in favor? Carried. Okay, motion to adjourn.
I'll make that.
Councillor Hanson, thank you. Okay, I guess with that, we will turn it over to our questions from the press.
Yeah. Starting off with the amends development plan and developing, or the amend zoning plan, both of which apply to that same area. That is just to confirm the portion of Willowdale Park where the curling rink and the wading pool were.
Yes.
Okay, and that's for the purposes of rezoning that from Parks and Recreation to potential residential?
Yes.
Is there a project already in mind for what could be done there, or what's the goal here for the city?
Investment ready.
Okay.
You can. Can I say? Yes, there is potential there, and the offer that we're looking at is for an assisted living complex.
Okay. We talking something similar to what this whole situation with the other part of the park was back before the last election? Something similar?
Yeah.
Okay.
Not same party, but similar.
Okay. Any particular reason why that site's chosen, or?
Because it's big.
It's an appropriate location for that sort of thing, you know, with assisted living. People like to, correct me if I'm wrong, be close to schools so children can partake with the people, and it's in a central area, so it's just an appropriate spot for it.
Okay. Was this a location that was suggested by whoever was developing this, or was this suggested by the city?
Well, we showed them every property we had.
Well, they wanted that. They actually wanted the zoo property, like the original offer with the previous council. And we declined and offered the other side because it's also keeping green space as well. So that is also something that is desirable to a complex instead of looking at nothing out the window. So no, they wanted the actual zoo part, but we offered the other half of it and they agreed.
Okay. What would we be looking at for the rest of this park? I mean, in terms of road access, currently the only way to get in towards the zoo is through that area. Would there be building over that road or a new road installed, or what would?
I don't think we can answer that.
I think at this time that's too early to say. Like right now, we're just wanting investment ready, so we're gonna wait and see what the developer comes back to us with a proposal, and then we'll have to look at how do you access the zoo.
Okay.
But there is vehicle access to the zoo through the back as well.
So
That's how
pick up the garbage.
That's how
Yeah.
the city vehicles access the zoo from the back.
That's
We
true.
just have
Okay.
to,
So we could make it,
But that's not public access, is it?
no,
We gotta see the plan.
But the developer will also probably pay for any changes that we need by closing that road. I'm not sure about that, but he did say that they'd be very involved. Okay.
Also want to know what this would mean potentially for the rest of that Willville Park, because I know, of course, the wading pool and the curling club area is one part of it. You've got the playground right next to it. You've got the remainder of that park, which is still fairly in use, obviously the zoo. What is this going to mean for the rest of the layout of that park? Is the playground going to?
Playground will probably move, I would think. When I look at the plan and I look at the square footage, but I mean, that's easy. That's just, logistical stuff. That's,
Okay, so that wouldn't be removed, it would be moved elsewhere.
It would
Yeah, it's
probably
too
just be
new.
pushed.
Why,
Closer to the zoo.
yeah, just,
But we, again, the plans haven't.
There's a lot of land too on the other side there that we can.
Also, because I remember when this, not exactly the same parcel of land, but a similar parcel of land was being pitched as the next site for the Aqua Center. Obviously that didn't pan out because to hear the last council discuss it, that I believe it was some sort of geological scan or geophysical scan showed that building a pool at that site would not be feasible. Has there been any sort of research into whether or not an assisted living facility or location would be feasible on this site?
I think right now it's gonna be up to the developer if they decide to purchase that land. Like once we have it rezoned, if they decide, yeah, we're gonna buy it, then they'll figure out the exact size of the complex and then they'll do, because it's gonna be a private entity owning this.
Part of the rationale, part of the difficulty with the pool having been there with the first design that was talked about was the cost to the pool with regards to the blasting that was going to be required. In this case, this would not be blasting that would be required by us. And so it would be up to the developer once they determine what their facility is going to look like, what they're going to need and so on. But the cost to blast for the pool was borne by us. And so we needed to look at something that was going to be more financially feasible to still be able to provide the services that we wanted to.
Okay. Maybe too early to tell, obviously, because the zoning changes haven't even been cleared yet, but is there a sort of timetable for when the city may reach a deal with this?
No.
Well, it depends, right? We have to go through the public hearing, we have to go to the second and third reading. And so that timeline comes first, and then we can possibly make announcements, depends, right? The developer has to do his due diligence as well.
Okay, so I'm sure we'll have questions for that as that project goes on, but in the meantime, want to also ask, of course, about this utility deficit that was mentioned here. The $3,700 roughly from 2018 and the just under 1.1 million from 2022, and the proposal here for a rate rider on gallons of water. Can we discuss how these deficits were incurred in the first place? What happened?
Well, there's a couple of things. Public Utilities Board has a requirement that we consider amortization as an expense. like as a true hard expense within all of the utility budgeting or financials. And so in 2018, that deficit that was incurred was specific to amortization expenses. And in 2022, part of this was overruns on the Church Street project and amortization. Amortization alone for the water treatment plant and the wastewater treatment plant is between $600,000 and $800,000 a year. And so this is one of the reasons why I wanted to bring in an outside consultant to do the water rate study, so that we could become compliant with everything that Public Utilities Board has in terms of expectation. And because we need to ensure that our utility runs itself and doesn't utilize taxpayer money, but fees, water, sewer, and so on, right?
Okay, so then the proposal here, which would be needing to be sent to PUB for approval, would be the $1.69 per 1,000 gallons of water for 5 years until the total amount's recovered. What is this going to end up meaning for the average consumer out here in Flin Flon? Like, how much money on average are we looking at?
Well, you should have a copy of the actual bylaw that has, because it's not just the operating deficit, it's also the part about the increase in fees.
I was going to ask about that.
I figured you would. So let's go to the part of the bylaw, and we'll just talk about the 2025 ones, just because those are the first ones that come up. And so what you can see is, you'll see this chart right here, right? So the top chart, the very first side is for, the top chart is for metered properties. And so for the 5/8 inch meter, which is the smallest meter that we use, that cost on a monthly basis would be $31.43. Yes, that's right. I just wanted to make sure I was reading the right line. And so in a quarterly bill, that would be about a little over $90 for a quarterly payment. Right now, I think that payment is somewhere around $89 or $75 quarterly. So it would be a little bit of an increase. But we're going to talk about the unmetered ones, because that's a majority of our homes, like our regular houses. Unmetered right now for the total monthly charge is about $105. This is going to go to $140. So that's not just the rate rider, that's an increase in payments in order to make our utility financially balanced. Okay, and so, but I also want to talk a little bit about water consumption. Because one of the things that happens when you have a number of properties that are unmetered is there's less opportunity for people tend not to necessarily be as concerned about their water consumption. And so, and that has proven over time through research in other communities that have utilized unmetered and metered. But if we want to really compare, then what I did was I went and I took a look at the PAW, who on their website only has their rates up to 2020. So that was a little, I wanted to see 2023. And so their rates for the same 5/8 inch meter, because it's really hard to compare unmetered properties when very little other communities have the type of system that we do. Our system is relatively unique, but I was able to compare the 5/8 inch meter. And so the 5/8 inch meter for ours is going to be the $31.43 per month. Theirs in 2020 was $29.83 per month. So from a broader perspective from other communities, our numbers are not quite as out to lunch as they appear to be. So with the exception of the unmetered properties, where if we start to be very concerned about our water consumption, then we might be able to bring some of those numbers down, because a part of the cost is heating the water, which last year alone was a $500,000 bill. And the more water we consume, the more water leaks we have. I know you guys are concerned about those. Thank you very much for that. The higher that cost is. So this is all about making our water utility financially stable and in some ways to also start to be more concerned about less water consumption.
When is these increases gonna kick in?
Well, that's a good question, because this is not scheduled to come into play until January 1st, 2025.
Okay.
And before we do that, we have to do this first reading, and essentially at this moment, nothing has changed, right? So we do this first reading, and then the Public Utilities Board actually has the responsibility to come here and have a public hearing. So you don't get to just talk to us and say, we don't like those. You get to talk to the Public Utilities Board and say, hey, wait a minute, this may or may not work for our community. We need you to take a second look at this.
And when will they be coming to a meeting?
We don't know that, they tell us. And when they tell us, I will tell you and
Okay.
everybody else.
It's also mandatory that we follow their rules. So if we're not, if we're running in a deficit, we have to change it. Or then they step in and the government steps in. Your utilities have to pay for themselves. So this deficit has actually been going on for quite a while, a number of years. And now it's just accumulated and they've saw it, and then we had the study. So it probably should have been raised slowly all along. If you look at what the consultants came with and what Pub has said over the years.
Okay, so to go off a little bit about what Lynn said here, unmetered water and wastewater customers, the previous charge, just to, so I have the numbers right, you said it was about 105?
I think it's about 105 per month. I'd have to have my water bill in front of me to be able to look to see. You could also, if you like, you could send me a quick email tomorrow and I'll give you the exact number.
Okay, so just by that number, and again, it is tentative, to go off that number, that's an extra $35 a month, that's an extra $420 a year.
Yeah.
What are we looking at then? Would we then be looking at changes to municipal tax plans in addition to that to offset that increase? Or?
Well, you know what, that's a good point. Because some of what's going to happen is we're going to transfer, because we're also responsible to not only have the budget and the finances even at the end of the day for the utility, we are also responsible to have a utility reserve, which we don't have, partly because of the way the grant in lieu was structured before it was reworked with the HUD-based situation. The grant in lieu would not support anything that was relative to utilities, because utilities were supposed to do their own thing. And so the grant in lieu, in order to do certain things and still be able to afford them, sometimes there would be, taxation would be, for a large project, taxation would be used to move into utilities, and then but the grant in lieu would stay in taxation. Okay, so there was kind of an offsetting thing. But it also meant that over time, there was no reserve built up in the utility fund. So there's no water reserve in case we need to put a whole bunch of money into a water treatment plant or something, right? And so this is also part of this. This is also going to help to build up that reserve. So by the time this 5 years is over, we're going to have money in a reserve as well. So that's also part of it. And so that means that we won't be taking, that we'll be moving some less taxation, because the full cost of the utilities is going to be borne by the utilities. Because that's what I'm trying to say in a really long, convoluted way.
Yeah. I mean, we're talking about property taxes. When is it ever not in a long and convoluted way? That's part of the thing. Also looking at these metered and unmetered charges here that are being proposed, in addition to the rider that was mentioned, what are we looking at any other sort of changes or increases unrelated to that?
Yes and no. So the rate rider is the only increase that is specific to the deficits and rebuilding or building up the reserve. There is a small amount of, there's increases to the basic water fees themselves as a way to just increase income into the utility in general, so we can get to that point where it's stable and doesn't lose money. What else can I say? The other thing that we've done that we haven't done in the past is also a requirement of public utilities, is that we have to split out wastewater and water and customer service charge. So those numbers were essentially only presented in one number before. Now on the bills, effective January 1st, 2025, you will be able to see how much is based on wastewater cost, how much is based on water cost, and then what the customer service charge is.
Okay, also wanted to ask about, what was it here, let's see. The leave granted for Mayor Fontaine, obviously he's not been at the last few meetings, and this is granting leave for the next meeting, I believe. Do we have an estimation of when Mayor might be coming back? Is that too early to tell, or?
Yes, no, we don't.
Okay. Okay, and this is so unclear, the granting him an absence to the next meeting, that's done because you can only miss so many meetings consecutively?
That's right.
So what was the rule regarding that?
3, wasn't it?
3, and then what would happen?
Well, if you didn't get an exemption, which we just gave
Yeah.
Mayor Fontaine,
Okay,
you might have to have a by-election, so that's why we would rather just give him a leave. By-elections are expensive and we like him,
And he'll be back.
and he'll be back.
So if he's not going to be back, let's say, because the next meeting after the 5th, then on the 5th, we'll do another resolution for
Yeah.
that next meeting. Because there are exceptional circumstances and we all understand why he's away.
okay, and that's a family health issue, if I remember
Yes.
correctly.
Yeah.
Won't go into too much detail about that because not my business, quite frankly.